The AFC North is at a interesting place, a place that we have really never seen it be. See, this division for a long time has been the pinnacle, with the exception of the Cleveland Browns, up until 2020. Has been the pinnacle of stability, right? Marvin Lewis, Bill Cowher, Brian Billick back in the day, right? And then now the new generation of this, the Mike Tomlin, the Zach Taylor, the Kevin Stefanski, and the John Harbaugh of it all. Those have been the same guys for 5 years, 10 matchups over that time in the regular season. These guys have faced each other. The most stable division in the NFL, and for the most of the time, that meant that the AFC North was one of the toughest divisions in all of football, right? And I'm going to bring on somebody I know who knows about this division, Ace Boogie, to talk about it. And Ace, it's fascinating because we used to watch the fact that this division was so solid and stable. It used to destroy other teams when they would come out and play. We used to talk about it like you're not going to have this great record or this great season when you have an AFC North schedule. It was a wall that people have run into, and this year, none of that is happening for any of the teams in the AFC North the way that they're used to, right? The Ravens are hoping to go and get their third win of the season in October. The Cleveland Browns are in the same exact place after the bye week. And well, they're not going to be able to get their third win until November, right? The Cincinnati Bengals are under 500 without Joe Burrow again for a chunk of the season. And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who it feels like their fan base is finally realizing that they've been on the same ride for like 8 years now, right? And they're kind of sick of it. And we're at this interesting crossroads where a division defined by its stability for the better part of 20 years looks like it's at its breaking point. Obviously, I want you to come on here and talk about the Cincinnati element of this. Zach Taylor, I know you are an advocate for his letting go of in Cincinnati. What is it about Zach Taylor specifically that Bengal fans feel like he is dragged down on this team over the last few years?
I think when it comes to Zach Taylor, you got to talk about the execution and preparation. A lot of those big moments, they're not ready. And, they come out flat, and he's an offensive coach. So when the offense comes out flat, that really leads to you questioning him. And then you kind of look at Zach Taylor when he came in. He didn't have much experience as an offensive coordinator, and especially in the NFL. He was an interim offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins for a little bit. They were bad. When he was a offensive coordinator at the collegiate level, which was UC, Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, he was awful. He had one of the worst offenses in that college's history. And so he already came in with those connotations because this isn't someone that Bengals fans had never seen before. They'd seen him at the collegiate level. So when you see his offense, it's very predictable. I mean, early on in this situation, they would have interviews from players that played against him, and they would literally say he needs to change up that offense because we knew what was coming every single time. And when you have Jamar Chase, you have Joe Burrow, you have those guys there, it was just too predictable. It was too volatile of an offense. Like even when we first got Jamar Chase, a lot of people think that, the offense was Jamar Chase. They were doing their thing. The offense was very volatile. It had moments where they just couldn't score. Defense would help them out. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a Jamar Chase bomb for a touchdown. So, like, if you were looking at the highlights, it looked like the Bengals were an explosive offense, but they were not efficient whatsoever. They were wildly inefficient, really all the way up until 2024, where we were told that Dan Pitcher was going to come in and kind of provide and take over the offense. When that happened, we started to see the Bengals offense that we really wanted. And the Zach Taylor scheme, since he's a former quarterback, is just predicated, has always been predicated on the pass. He never has committed to the run game. And his scheme, the way that it's set up in terms of pass blocking, they go for pass blockers. They don't go for run blockers. So you get these issues where we can't run the ball because of Zach's scheme. And it's very predictable. It was a point where every time that the Bengals were going under center, everybody knew that we were running the ball because Zach Taylor is going to allow them to play in shotgun and just do that 95% of the game. And there was just no self-awareness. Like, Zach's biggest issue is his awareness within the game. Like, if you're not able to run the ball, you might want to stop running the ball. If you're running the ball every first down, you might want to stop doing that. So I think the back and forth between the Bengals fans and Zach Taylor has just been on situational football. You go all the way back to the Super Bowl. You're paying Joe Mixon. He's clearly your star running back, and you're putting in a package where you're bringing in some IJP run on a down when you need it. It just didn't make sense. And then that was a situation where in the second half of that game, Von Miller was killing them. Aaron Donald was killing them. Not once is he asking for a double team on Aaron Donald. Not once in Browns games is he asking for a double team on Myles Garrett. And it's just like, bro, like what are you doing? And then on the last play of the Super Bowl, he goes empty. I'm like, in a game where you're getting sacked and demolished, a really good coach would realize, hey, this isn't working. I need to switch it up. A really good coach would say, hey, my play calling isn't working. Let me hand that to somebody else. Zach Taylor, for some reason, just does not want to give up the play calling. And it's crazy because a year later, he takes back over play calling. The Bengals have the same struggles. And then you get what you get now. So with Zach Taylor, he's a solid person, like pillar of his community, this and that. He's not a great motivator. Like there's a lot of people in that locker room that don't really feel like Zach is enough of a rah-rah guy to inspire anybody or that they can really take seriously. So you kind of get into a situation where you kind of question, is this guy really good or did he just look up and get Joe Burrow? And Joe Burrow has covered a lot of the deficiencies of this team that we've seen. He doesn't really want to play a head coach. And that's the part where we're like, dog, put the play calling down, concentrate on the entire focus of the team because the defense is bad. You got these issues here. We just need you to manage the team. And Zach Taylor hasn't really kind of been open to that role. He just wants his hands on the offense. And when the offense isn't there, it's always issues for them. And when the defense, now that the offense is there, defense isn't there. So with Zach, the reason that it's hard to fire him is because he did get this team to a Super Bowl. But at the same instance, the last 3 years, last 4 years, they have not lived up to the expectations that this team should be playing at. And so that's why people kind of feel like, dog, we gotta get rid of this guy because if there's no Joe Burrow here, if we still had Andy Dalton, he's probably the worst he's probably the worst coach in the league. And I think a lot of people think he's a bottom tier coach. He just happens to be in a good situation.
I think the Bengals are one of the most fascinating cases of like, you got to like actually pay attention to them because the first 2 years they broke out, right? I think the year you went to Super Bowl and then you went to the conference championship right after that, right? Yeah. So those 2 years, I think a lot of people were like, oh, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and like they were huge parts to what they were able to do. But if you watched them, it was like, oh, the defense was really like, playing at a high level at times, especially with DJ Reader in there, wrecking shop on the defensive line. And then you get, enough stops to where you're only going to stop Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase so many times, right? And then they're going to be able to light you up and do something eventually, get an explosive play. If they were kind of a ticking time bomb offense, right? Where if you're playing against them and you keep not getting extended drives against the Bengals, that's where you end up in trouble because you're like, oh, it's only but a matter of time before no matter how much pressure we're getting on them, he's going to get one off the Jamar and that's going to break the game open, right? Like that was kind of the way that the Bengals were winning games. And then but the perception was like, oh, they're the greatest show on turf. They're just putting up 40 points every night. And that wasn't what it. But then by the time I think people really started paying attention to the Bengals, that actually ended up being the case. So it's like retroactively, everybody acts like that's always been the case there. But it hasn't always been there. And it was interesting because Joe Burrow had so much success last year. They made the switch to play caller to Dan Pitcher, right? And kind of giving him more control over what's going on there. And that was like the first time I saw the Bengals offense where I'm like, oh, they're not even like doing the ticking time bomb thing. They're just exploding on command. Like that's more of what you expect them to be. And it's interesting that they kind of gone back to that model where it's like, okay, like that, like the Joe Burrow games that he played so far this year, it felt like the same kind of like, okay, well, if we get enough stops, we'll get a big play here. And that's one thing when you got a good enough defense. And like the Bengals defense in 2021 and 2022, especially during the regular season, wasn't like elite or anything like that. But it was good enough to get stops, especially against bad offenses. Now, it's like to the point to where you're not going to get that. And then that's where I think the Zach Taylorism of it all kind of explodes because he has these weird spurts of just getting really committed to shit that wasn't working in the first quarter, and just like he tried to wills his way into it. It is a strange philosophy to watch take place here. Now, since you are somebody who, are not a fan of Zach Taylor right now, is there a way that by the end of the season, you personally can feel a lot more comfortable with Zach Taylor as the head coach of the Bengals, or are you past the point where there's really nothing more for you to see? Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper.
Yeah, I think I'm at the point where there's not really much more for me to see. I think when you compare and you're looking at the Andy Reids out there and some of those elite coaches that you have to go against, coaching matters. Like, coaching really does truly matter, especially if you don't have the pieces that you need on defense. I always talk about way back when Mike Zimmer first joined the Bengals and was the defensive coordinator. It was a very similar situation where they had a bunch of no-name guys, and because of coaching, he was able to rise the floor of that team. Whereas I don't think Zach Taylor rises anything. I think that he's just getting in the way of Bengals having success in the postseason. And now we don't, like you mentioned, we don't have the defense, right? But it looks a little different if you have Andy Reid calling plays for the Bengals or Kyle Shanahan calling plays, because you know that they're going to score. You don't know that with Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor could literally wreck a drive for you, and you know your defense is going to give it up regardless. So I'm at the point, man, where I kind of feel like we've tried this Zach thing out. It's cool. And I honestly feel like the reason that he's gotten the leash that he has is because Burrow likes him. But I'm like, something's got to change, man. Like, the coaches that he's hiring is too buddy. To me, he was a guy that didn't have that much experience. He's brought on a lot of guys that don't have that much experience. So yeah, I'm at the point where I would like to see it shaken up. Regardless of how this season goes, I would like a shakeup at the head coach position, because I just don't think that he's going to be able to go, band for band with Kyle Shanahan, band for band with Andy Reid. Like, he's not doing that. He's not doing that whatsoever. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, what do you think it's going to take for them to move off of Zach Taylor? Because I know people have their perceptions about how the Bengals operate.
Yeah.
Is this like a Joe Burrow has to be on board with getting rid of him, or is this a situation where it's a bit more obvious than that?
It's definitely going to be a tricky situation. I think if Joe was not on board with it, I think that they would definitely fire him, right? I think there's some frustration building there with Jamar Chase, right? And I don't know if they do listen to their star receivers and stuff like that, because I remember AJ Green having input, and when AJ Green didn't like the offense, they fired the coordinator the next week. So if those guys have a say-so in it, I think that they do have that. But I also think, a circumstance that could save him is if Flacco is somehow able to get this team to Joe Burrow. That would save him, because I've seen that happen before. Like, Zach was on the hot seat when Jake Browning came in that first time, and they wanted to see, can Zach Taylor win without Joe Burrow? And Jake Browning was able to win some games. So I could see them saying, like, if Flacco gets them enough wins, they're going to credit that to Zach, which in my opinion, I think it should be credited to Flacco. But it is a tough situation. It's not as straightforward as, like, hey, we're just going to fire him, right? Like, but I think if he comes out, and like I said on the show, if you finish with like 6 to 7 or 8 wins, I think he's done. I think he's cooked if that's the case. But if they're able to make some kind of fight here, and let's say he gets it back to Joe Burrow, and they're in a situation like last year where they're 9-8 and they're on the outside looking in, they're going to give him credit for the Joe Flacco stuff, which to me, I'm like, nah, let's look past that. But it is a complicated situation because Mike Brown is a very loyal person to a fault, where he keeps guys longer than he really should. And I think that even goes for GM Duke Tobin, who's had some very bad drafts, but he's been here since 2000. Paul Alexander was there for a long time until they got rid of him. And it really takes people that are cornerstones of the franchise to tell Mike Brown, like, we don't want this guy there anymore, for him to actually do something.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like, is the best case scenario truly the best case scenario for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, hey, you get this team to a place where Joe Burrow can take over and then you maybe make the playoffs, right? I think me and you are both at an understanding that with this defense, it's just going to be a cap on what you could do in the playoffs, like, because you're going to have to need 4 great games from this defense, and I don't think you're going to get 4 in a row, right? Like, that's just what it's going to take, or at least 4 livable performances versus like elite quarterbacks, right? You know, we just watched 39 points to Justin Fields. So it would take a remarkable bounce back for that. So, like, in your mind, because you're a Bengals fan, you want the Bengals to win as much as possible, but you also want to pay attention to some of the long-term things that you feel like are going to affect Joe Burrow's career over the next 5-6 years. And Zach Taylor, certainly one of them. I don't think you guys are that worried about draft position. I don't think you guys have much confidence that, like, Duke Tobin's going to do anything with them draft picks, even if he gets an early one. But, you know, like, how do you view this? As somebody who, you know that if they get to the playoffs, which you do want them to get to, that also means you're probably carrying along Zach Taylor. And now Zach Taylor can legitimately say, hey, we've had 2 stints without Burrow, and I've gotten over 500.
Yeah.
You know, so
I think if you do carry him into the playoffs, as I said, it's going to have to come from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase that they don't want to play with Zach Taylor anymore. That's the only way that he makes the playoffs and still gets fired. Like, if they have some kind of first round exit, and a big part of it is, let's just say, because this is something Zach Taylor would do. He comes out in that game and only targets Jamar Chase 4 times in the entire game. Yeah, him and Jamar Chase is going to let him know about it. And I think that they're going to be frustrated and feel like Zach is holding them back. Or it could be a situation where, let's say he does give Jamar 7-8 targets, but he only gives T. Higgins 2 targets, like he just did in the Jets game. They're like, those 3 are big stakeholders in what the Bengals do. And if they go to the front office and they say, we don't want to play for Zach Taylor anymore, then it would still be a situation where they move on from him with the playoffs. Or it could be the defense, right? Like Jamar just voiced this week. I don't know how many people were paying attention. Jamar voiced his frustrations about the Bengals defense. Like, they basically asked him about the defense, and he was like, I don't know, bro. I don't play defense. So you got to ask them. So, you know, if they feel like the defense is holding them back and they feel like Zach plays a part in that because of, you know, his insight from hiring defensive coaches. I mean, he made the decision to move on from Lou Anarumo. So I could see them also saying, like, Zach can't build a defense here. Let's get somebody else in here with more experiences. Because a lot of, like, when Zach first came in, ironically, a lot of people felt like Lou Anarumo didn't have enough experience. Now, obviously, he's been able to have success with the Colts, but there were a lot of players that were just like, these are our coaches. Like, his resume isn't like that. So if they, you know, players are going to know that, right? Because these are guys that they have to listen to. Everybody has a Wikipedia. You can go and find where these guys have coached at, and you can see the positions that they played. I think if they feel like Zach's staff isn't up to par, I can see them saying, like, we got to get Zach out of here. We got to bring in some people that know what they're doing.
My last question is, if you do get to a place, like, what's an acceptable place for Joe Burrow to get the team back record-wise? Like, what's been the goal?
I think 9 to 10 wins, bro. I think that's the world that they live in right now, because I think anything more than that is risky. So, and I think, like,
how many, like, when Joe Burrow returns, how many wins do you want the team to be at so you can have the shot at getting to the win-loss record?
So I think he's scheduled to be back week 15. So you probably got to hand him a team with at least 6 wins.
Okay. So you get to the point to where you hand him the team with the 6 wins. What does the expectation of the season, because, like, I think expectations get coaches fired. I think you brought up something like, hey, if he messes up in the playoffs, it's not out the realm of possibility that gets him fired too. What are the expectations then? If you make it to week 15, Joe Flacco has a magical run. He gets you to that place, and then you hand the team off to Joe Burrow. What do those expectations then become for Bengals fans, where it's like, hey, should we be challenging for the division? Like, how deep are you do you think it's the Bengals organization is going to think they should get in the playoffs? Because it could be a situation where it's like, oh, you get Joe Burrow back, you do all this work, you get smacked in the first round, people get fired, right? Like, because the expectations get people fired more than win-loss record.
Right. I think the expectation is it's changed this year, because going into this year, they obviously wanted to get back to the playoffs. That was the goal. Joe Burrow goes down early. So getting him back is just, the expectation is to try to get into the playoffs and make a run. I think that's where it's at. I don't think that you're winning the division. I don't think that they're going to be like, he's got to win the division. I think they're hoping like get one of those low tier spots and try to get in and try to make a run, which is going to be difficult because the injury that he has, we're seeing it right now when it comes to Brock Purdy, that you might think that you can go, but you might not be able to. So they've got to kind of play that by ear and figure out how it's going to go. But I think the expectation would be just try to get to the playoffs if you can, make a run. I think if they're not in position to make the playoffs, I don't think you even see Joe Burrow come back. So in that situation, if it's not even worth it, and it's like they only have 5 wins and mathematically they're already eliminated because of some kind of tiebreaker, I don't think that they risk putting Joe Burrow back out there.
Or if like you're not technically eliminated, but you're like a team winning a game away. You got like
that 2%, and this person need to lose to that person, and that guy. Nah,
like your destiny isn't in your own hands. If it isn't, we can win and get in, then I think you should probably not play him. But we're talking with Ace Boogie, man, does a great job covering the Cincinnati Bengals.